You're listening to KPFK.
90.7 FM Los Angeles.
98.7 FM Santa Barbara.
93.7 San Diego.
99.5 Ridgecrest and China Lake.
And for the world at kpfk.org.
Welcome to Feminist Magazine, a radical weekly radio program bringing you radio for and about all kinds of women and feminists. Every Tuesday, you hear stories and programming created and curated by our coalition of feminists. We're activists, artists, educators, mothers, journalists, and more.
Every week, we share things that matter to us and you, from local to global, little known to different takes on key stories from an intersectional feminist perspective. We highlight art and culture and news and voices of women and feminists from all walks of life to bring you fierce radio. Brilliant feminists, organizing, making change, and kicking ass.
And coming up on Feminist Magazine today, first, we're joined by activist Ivy Bottini and Lili Bernard of EndRapeSOL. They're working to abolish the statute of limitations for rape and sexual assault in California. California has a 10-year statute of limitations. How can we all be working to change that? All this and more on today's Feminist Magazine with your hosts, me, Lynn Harris-Ballin.
And me, Candace Hansen.
This is what feminism sounds like. So Candace, welcome. It's your first time co-hosting on FemMag.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we've got amazing guests today.
I know. Can you believe it?
So, and live in studio. We're like already enjoying our guests, and we want to share them with you. So let's get started. So California currently has a 10-year statute of limitations on reporting rape or sexual assault, but grassroots group EndRapeSOL is fighting that, and they've started a campaign statewide to abolish that statute of limitations. And we're joined today on the line by legendary feminist and LGBT rights activist Ivy Bottini. Hi, Ivy. Welcome to Feminist Magazine.
Well, hi. Thank you. It's my pleasure. How you doing there?
Well, we're doing great, and with us live in studio is your partner in crime, artist activist Lili Bernard, and she has inspired her activism too. So we're really happy to have you both here today.
Thank you, Lynn and Candace. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
So Ivy,
yeah, it really is. Hi, Lily.
Hey, sweetheart.
So Ivy, we're going to start with you. What inspired you, tell us, to start EndRapeSOL in the first place? What was the germ of the idea that got you going on this?
Well, it's kind of quirky. I watch a lot of Law and Order, Special Victims, and they're pretty much they do many shows on women who are raped and sexual assault and molestation and child molestation. I mean, it's just Dick Wolf produces very anti-assault and rape shows, and also on the news simultaneously about 4, 5, 6 months ago, there were women missing in Southern California. Women's bodies were being found. They had been murdered, raped, cut up. It was horrible. And I, in the middle of a Law and Order show, I just couldn't stand it 1 second more. And I said, self, do something about it. So I decided to form a group. I put the word out, and we held the first meeting in the community room in West Hollywood Library. And I called and invited various and sundry women's groups and activists that I knew. And we started to talk about it, and each woman had kind of her own story or her own reason for being there. And I was very encouraged and said we will have another meeting. But I noticed one woman especially, and I watched her. She seemed very strong, very confident, seemed to be right on the money around the issue. She talked about organizing instead of, what was happening with her personally. And so I called her the next day and asked if she would be my co-chair. And that woman is Caroline Hellman.
Right, and she's a former FemMag guest, and she's a professor of politics at Oxy College here in LA.
Yes.
Right.
And she's also kind of the head or one of the heads of the campus revolt on rape and sexual assault.
Right, at Oxy. So
that's what inspired me. It was really those two things.
Yeah, and then you said to yourself, do something about it.
That's exactly what I did. Just get off your little tuchus and do something about it.
Let's go to Lili right now. Lili, tell us about your personal experience with the issue and how did you get involved with EndRapeSOL?
I want to first piggyback on Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
I was at that first meeting, and so is my son Raphael, who's sitting here with us. He's on spring break from Johns Hopkins, and it was actually Raphael who came up with the title of our group and the hashtag EndRapeSOL.
Hashtag, thank you.
And so he was the only male there. And so was the mayor of West Hollywood, a woman named Lindsay P. Horvath. Mm-hmm. But I was there because in the early 1990s, Bill Cosby mentored me in preparation for my guest starring role on The Cosby Show. Mm-hmm. And he gained my total trust. He lifted me up, praised me about being not just an actor, but also a painter. And then when he gained my total trust, he drugged me and he raped me. And when I told him that I would report him to the police, he threatened serious consequences to my life. On multiple occasions, he said different things. He said that he would blacklist me. He said that he would tell all of Hollywood I was nothing but a no-good actress and a slut and whore just trying to sleep my way to the top. So he threatened my career. He went further and said that as soon as I went to the police and filed a police report against him, that he would go to the police station right after me and file a police report against me for false accusation and defamation. And who were they going to believe, Bernard, you or me? He also said, I'll make sure that you end up in jail and prison for a very long time, Bernard. Do you hear me? He also told me that I was dead, that I didn't exist, that he would erase me. And all these threats that he gave, I interpreted as not only the end of my career, but also of my life. I feared for my life.
Right.
And so I did not file a police report in fear for my life. We all have a will to survive. And I didn't doubt that he would enact those threats that he was blurting to me. Finally, however, empowered by dozens of women who came forward before me to disclose that they were also abused by Bill Cosby. I had told a number of people when it happened, such as my agents, pastor, therapists, doctors, family, but I had not yet disclosed to the public out of fear. And empowered by these women, I came forward and disclosed to the public in the spring of 2015. And at that point, I went to New Jersey where an assault occurred and filed a police report, only to find that because the assault occurred just a few months outside of the statute of limitations, they could not consider Bill Cosby for prosecution. And so as an artist, my artwork has dealt with the topic of race, of racism and also rape. It talks about sexual trauma, and I also do a lot of activism in the arts. I organize Black artists in Los Angeles, a group called Baila. And I wanted to do something with this trauma because I had a lot of trauma. One of the byproducts was PTSD and suicidal ideation, and I wanted to take something negative like this trauma, this PTSD, and turn it into triumph.
Right.
So I talked with a friend of mine who's like a brother to me, Roger Genbohr-Smith, who's a phenomenal actor and writer and director, and told him that I was really interested in doing something positive to help future victims of rape. A lot of times when they abolish the statute of limitations, as they did in New Jersey, they have a retroactive clause where, say, like maybe they abolish it in 96, but they can only go back a few years.
Okay.
So it's not going to help me or other Cosby survivors, but I wanted to do something to start a trend to abolish statute of limitations across the nation for the benefit of recent and future victims. So my friend Roger Genbohr-Smith, who again is like a brother to me, said to me, you gotta meet Caroline Hellman. And so Caroline said, come with me to this meeting. And I went and brought my son with me, and there I met Ivy, and the rest is history.
All right. So basically this is just been organizing since July of last year, and you've all come here with such passionate reasons for doing this. Tell us about the action you recently took on Hollywood Boulevard protesting at Bill Cosby's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Right. We've had a number of meetings, many meetings, and they're all organized by Ivy and Caroline. And we had organized this for a long time. And so it was it was highly attended. There were so many, dozens and dozens of activists, and what was wonderful is that people on the streets began joining us. We were chanting. If you go to the Los Angeles Times, you will find a video, and in that video, the narrative is actually my voice, and you can see what happened there. We had the people who have been housing our meetings, who've been hosting our meetings, is the National Council of Jewish Women. So there's a woman there named Maya, and she brought a whole bunch of youth, wonderful young Jewish women who were there. Caroline Heldman brought more than 20 of her students. My son Raphael was there. We had a spoken word artist named Tanya Ingram. Myself and another Cosby survivor, Victoria Valentino, we spoke. There was also who else was there?
And what was the reaction of folks passing by who saw this happening?
Well, it was
kind of this Hollywood moment.
It was definitely a spectacle. It was a Hollywood moment in that there was so much press. I mean, there were cameras galore, and I had taken myself and painted my face in war paint because I have my father's father was a veteran in the war of Cuba against Spain, and so I actually painted my face as a warrior with Afro-Caribbean iconography, symbolism, because it is a war that we rape victims go through. I poured a libation onto his star, praying that he surrender his soul, that Bill Cosby will, surrender his soul and repent for the sake of those who love him. So I did that. It was pretty dramatic, and it was beautiful, and it was just awesome.
And those kinds of grassroots public events really kind of gather energy, and they raise awareness, and they get visibility, but you're also really gathering the energy for all the activists. So now State Senator Connie Lever has recently introduced the Justice for Survivors Act, SB 813, to overturn that 10-year statute of limitations. So I'd like to ask both of you, maybe Ivy, you want to start. How is that all progressing? Now we're from the grassroots side, the grassroots is always pushing on the legislative side. What's happening on the legislative side about this? Ivy, you want to answer that one?
I will, yes, but
Okay.
Let me just step back for a moment. You asked what was happening with the passers-by on Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, sure.
I was passing out the leaflets, and in the leaflet it said that California had a 10-year limitation, and one young man, probably in his early 20s, says, "So what's the limitation on rape? That they can report it?" And I said, 10 years. Right now, it's 10 years. We want to get rid of it. He said, why? He said, 10 years seems plenty of time
Right.
to report it. And I thought, the guys don't get it. Unless it's a man who has been raped, the males don't get it. They don't understand. It's not something that goes away tomorrow or the next day or 5 years from now. You live with that trauma. That's why we want to get rid of it. Okay, getting to the legislative side.
Well, thank you for making that point. That's definitely that whole sense of not understanding why folks might not disclose, never mind report, over a long period of time because of all the trauma that they have to work through to get to that place, right?
Yes, and it's not just the trauma. It's the non-belief by
Yeah.
people. I mean, look at Cosby. Who would have thought? It was a shock to the country. He was the father. He was like what's his name in Father Knows Best. I mean, it was that kind of equivalent. And who would have thought? And then all these women started coming, and a lot of one of my own daughters said, "No, it's not true." And finally, after the 50 or 51 women came forward, she said, well, I guess it's true.
There you
but
go.
She had a hard time believing it because she grew up watching The Cosby Show. So it's something that is not going away overnight. So on to the legislative side. We knew that it was going to have to go to the legislature at some point. Leno up in San Francisco had tried to get something going in the assembly, and he couldn't even get it out of committee. And when I was thinking about that, I thought, it can't just be a one-sided, one person doing it. There's got to be backup. And that's why I formed the activist organization, because, feet on the street move legislators.
Right.
It's the people who vote for them. It's the only way it's going to happen. It's not going to happen if it just happens on the floor in the legislature. So, because a lot of the men there, they don't get it. They just don't get it. So, we were talking to one of the women who works for Betsy Butler. What's the name of the group, Lily?
The California Women Lawyers.
Yeah. And Betsy got interested, and so Connie Laver was approached. Thank goodness. She considered it, she thought about it, she postponed it a little bit, and then she got all on board, and she has a bill that is or will be momentarily introduced into the Senate. And we have great hopes for it. It's gone through a couple of committees and, before the official launching to the press and everything. So that's where we are. It's
and that's going to be happening in the next month or so, right?
I believe the beginning of April, yes.
Beginning of April. So 18 other states in the U.S. have already abolished their statute of limitations for this crime. Why is there resistance in California? We're supposed to be so progressive. Who opposes overturning it here?
Well, when Leno in San Francisco proposed it, it got nowhere. It couldn't get out of the committees, and it's very male controlled. And like that young man on Hollywood Boulevard,
right?
What? 10 years? Isn't that long enough?
Right.
It's the male mind not understanding what is the power play. It's pure power. When a woman is raped or seduced or whatever into doing something that she does not want to do and fights it, they just don't understand it.
Lily,
you can get over it, like in 5 minutes.
Well, let's bring Lily in on that.
I just want to say that I'm totally in agreement with Ivy, and that I see the maintenance of statute limitations on rape and sexual assault prosecution as a systematic sexism, and as a vehicle by which men in power in legislature, whether it's the large organizations like the Catholic Church, they can maintain their power and continue to disempower the voices of women by having these arbitrary time limits on rape and sexual assault prosecution.
And you've also got Victoria Valentino, who is a fellow Cosby survivor that you work with in this organization, has this great line where she says, rape is a murder of the spirit, which I think is such a perfect quote. And there's no statute of limitations for murder, but it's such a powerful metaphor. So what we're saying is really so many people don't understand that, and why it's so important that the work you guys are doing to convey the depth of the damage that's done.
I mentioned that in the petition that I authored on change.org. You can find the petition by just looking up my name, Lili Bernard, Lili Bernard, and you'll see a picture of Victoria and me together. And yes, she does say that, and for many good reasons. When I talked about rape survivors being like veterans of war, rather than the war being waged upon foreign territories, they're waged upon the landscape of women's bodies.
Right.
And that you have a male organ intruding a woman in the most holy places, a place that decides life or death. Common results of rape are unwanted pregnancy, STDs such as AIDS. Rape victims often end up depressed, addicted, suicidal. Some don't survive the suicidal ideation. And this is because the crime is just so horrific, and naturally people need time to process the trauma. They also need time to find the strength and the courage to withstand the inevitable victim blaming. I'm telling you,
right.
The hatred that I receive online is horrendous. People attacking my daughter, saying that she's going to grow up to be a slut just like her mom. People shaming and blaming me. People telling me that they will rape me, that I should just kill myself, do everybody a favor. So there's that. And when people wonder why we as Cosby survivors took so long to speak publicly against him, and that the disbelief was one of the reasons, just look at the hatred we're receiving now. Could you imagine the shaming and blaming we'd be subjected to if we were to have come out to him in the prime of his career?
Exactly. So that petition that's up at change.org, you so eloquently say justice knows no time limit. And why is it important our listeners go and sign that right now, right after they listen to this program?
Right now, because the bill is going to go through a number
of committees
of voting. So it's important that the legislators see the numbers of people who support this and who understand that these are unjust laws. And I want to say that we're working with other people, not just the ones that I mentioned. You know, we're also working with NOW. There's Karen Ayers. She was also at the rally, and she's with Hollywood Now. So it's a very large movement. And we need the legislators to see the numbers of people, because we ultimately are the ones who decide whether or not they're going to be reelected.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, for our last wrap-up question, let's give our listeners the website where they can find more, all the information about EndRapeSOL and all of the contact stuff. And there's links to the change.org. It's all right there.
Yes, it's EndRapeSOL.org. So that's EndRapeSOL.org. That's our website. And you can also find us online. We have on Facebook, we also have a Facebook page. And again, look for our petition. Please just Google Lili Bernard, Cosby Survivor, turning trauma into triumph, and you'll find the petition. Please sign it and share it.
Well, Ivy Bottini and Lili Bernard from EndRapeSOL, wonderful to have you both on the show. Such an important thing to talk about, and we look forward to following up and hearing what happens next. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's music, some Louisiana Bayou rhythms. Then Sunday, March 20th, get your body to the Ash Grove at the Improv. And let Grammy-nominated Lisa Haley and the Zydecoats bring you up. They've been called the most joyful Americana Cajun Zydeco act on tour today. Plus, the new Ash Grove Players featuring Claudia Lanier, star of the Oscar-winning film 20 Feet from Stardom, bluesman S.S. Jones, and special guest Chris Darrow. Get your feel-good on with Lisa Haley and the Zydecoats and the new Ash Grove Players, Sunday, March 20th at the Improv, 8162 Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles. Doors open at 3:30. Show starts at 4 p.m. KPFK is a proud media sponsor.
Cool.
You're listening to KPFK.
90.7 FM Los Angeles.
98.7 FM Santa Barbara.
93.7 San Diego.
99.5 Ridgecrest and China Lake.
And for the world at kpfk.org.